Welcome to Holy Grit Leadership That Lasts, the podcast for leaders who are done with fluff and hungry for depth. Hey, listen, if you're looking for more than just quick wins and shallow strategies in leadership, you're in the right place. We're talking bold, ethical, and effective leadership fueled by timeless truth from scriptures and built to withstand the pressure of the real world. Okay, now listen. Whether you're leading a church, running a business, managing a team, or just trying to hold your life together on Monday morning, Holy Grit Leadership is here to help you lead with courage, clarity, and conviction. Listen, this isn't your grandma's Bible study. Unless she was a total boss, let's dig in, let's lead well, let's build some leadership that lasts. All right. Episode 4. We are getting it. Like you all thought we'd stop at episode 3. No, absolutely not. We are bringing you episode 4, what the best leaders do differently. Matt, how you doing? Okay?
I'm doing all right.
Well, wonderful.
Yes. How about you?
Well, I'm having one of the best days I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
So get ready for a lot of energy and excitement right in your face.
Okay? That's good.
Okay.
One thing that has energized me just a minute ago is like I noticed up there's that and so I got to see him. It looks like he's eating the
it looks like a Pac-Man. He was like wah 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 wah. Yeah. Well, don't worry. Those are the bad guy Pac-Mans that chase after the buffs.
Okay.
But the buffs are slow. And I don't know if you've ever seen the video of their thing, where the buffalo just goes crazy.
Oh, Ralphie. Yeah. She's not very fast.
Well, neither is a Colorado buffalo.
Oh, okay.
So that's right.
All right.
Well, regardless of all of the crappy Colorado buff stuff going on, I'm excited to do this one with you. We are going to kind of ping pong this back and forth. I have no idea what you're going to say, and you really don't know what I'm going to say. So how we're going to set this up today is we are going to say, hey, here's what these amazing leaders do differently than most, right? Than great leaders. And you're going to start, then I'm going to go, then you're going to go. And we'll see if I disagree with any of them.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I bet I don't, but at the same time, for those of you listening at home, don't worry, there's still a chance. So Matt, I'm going to kick this off from you. What separates the best from the great? I'm going to let you kind of kick this off. What do you think?
So the greatest leaders, there is always something a little bit special. And so this first statement is that I, as I was thinking about this today, is great leaders lead with purpose and conviction.
Okay, so purpose and conviction. I want you to keep cooking on that. So give me some specifics on why an amazing leader above and beyond all other leaders leads with purpose and conviction.
Well, if all you're doing is a job and there's no real, you don't feel the sense of calling in what you're doing, I believe as a pastor that we've all been called to the places in life where we are. And so whether you're a janitor or whether you're a superintendent, like God has called you to that. And in our calling, we do the best that we can. That's what it says in Colossians, to whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as though working with the Lord, though you're working for the Lord.
Yes.
And so that for me, I've been called to be a pastor.
Yeah. And you do it with passion and you do it with energy. And you do it with growth in mind. And that's something that's actually, I'm really kind of glad that you kicked this off with that, because I have an Arby's story.
Arby's story.
So our local Arby's has this dude, and he is amazing. He is always the guy taking your order through the drive-thru, and he always says, would you like sauce with that? And I say, no, thank you. He goes, less mess. I totally get it. And then when you come across and pick it up, he's just excited to see you. He's excited to be there. And that alone is magnetic.
Yeah.
I want to go back to this Arby's. They have the meats, but That's, that's not a promotion. We're not a promotion of Arby's, but I'll tell you, they have the meats.
Yeah.
But two, it's because of this guy that's positive. He's there. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it well with a purpose and conviction.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Here's one thing that I want us to consider, because I don't know, I just feel like somebody may be watching this and they started out their career or their calling understanding that it was a calling and they had purpose and they were excited about it. But then as time went on, there was burnout, there was frustration, things happened that didn't go well. And now they're just getting by. They're just checking off the box. And maybe you've tuned into this podcast to rekindle that fire. And I really believe that when we understand this is a calling on my life, then we're going to do it with that kind of passion and conviction. And we're going to really go after it. I think regaining that, relighting that fire is something we have to do on a regular basis. And we're going to talk more about some of the ways we do that today through the other topics that we cover on these subjects. But we need to be intentional about lighting the fire, keep it burning,
stoking the flame.
Yeah. And remind yourself, why am I doing this?
Absolutely. Yep. And then, hey, think about this. Are you ready for this? Humdinger, if you will. Okay. The opposite of leading with purpose and conviction is those that are quiet quitting or grumpy staying. Right. Yeah. So have you ever experienced an employee that, they lost their purpose and conviction? They're still sticking around because they need a job, right?
Obligation, maybe
sometimes. And, I said I'd stay, but I'm going to stay grumpy, or I'm going to stay, and I'm just going to quietly quit. I mean, I'm not going to do very much. I'm going to do the bare minimum. I'm not going to meet the standard. And so I would agree, great leaders lead with purpose and conviction, because that's what kind of brings the electricity out into the environment. Absolutely.
Right. You know how we do that? Because I want to go a sub point here with this.
Oh, okay. We just went super submarine stuff. Okay, go for it.
It's preparation.
Yeah.
Preparation. 2 Timothy 4:2 says, I give you this charge, Paul writing to this young pastor, Timothy.
Okay.
Be prepared in season and out of season. There's a reason for that. Timothy was given charge over these churches that he knew nothing about leading. And so Paul writes this letter. It's very specific and extensive on how you lead with purpose and conviction. And clearly their purpose was to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And so he's like, this is how you do that, Timothy. You be prepared. Too many leaders think that they're going to come in and just lead on their own gifts, their own skills. Like a lot of leaders are naturally gifted and they find themselves in that roles because of that, but then they stop preparing. We have to be a lifelong learner. We have to prepare ourselves.
Because how fast does charisma wear off? How fast does being able to be great in an interview wear off, to where the guts and the nuts and the bolts of the organization need to rely on true leadership?
Yeah.
Where other parts of leadership, like being a great communicator, extending the vision, the identity of what you're doing, making sure you're holding people accountable, all those things amazing leaders do, can fade if you don't plan and properly prepare for the full gamut of what they're about to enter into, right?
I'm going to give you a really famous Harry Truman quote. He's sitting right over your shoulder.
Let's go, Truman, right there. What do you got? What do you say?
He says, not all readers lead, but all leaders read.
You can never read enough, but you'll never be sorry for reading too much. I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
And good old Truman dropping some morsels of wisdom to us. But I would agree. I mean, I've never read something to where I just thought, even if you get one thing from it, that adds to your toolbox.
Yeah.
And as leaders, like you said, preparing and making sure that you're leading with that purpose and conviction. I think that's a good first starter. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to hear yours.
Are you ready for mine?
Yeah.
It might be a lot better than yours.
Maybe.
Okay, so here we go. Now, I'm going to start off with this one. The best listeners that do the best leaders. Thank you. So I'm starting off hot. We're going to edit that out. Don't worry about it. The best leaders, more than anything, can explain the DNA and the identity of the vision clearly. Yeah. I always think those are the best guys. If you have someone, or gals, if you have someone come in they work hard. They, get all of their work done. They show up on time. They leave on time. That's great. Okay.
Right.
That's a good, solid foundation. But the ones that truly people want to follow are the ones that come in and say, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. That's the end of the road. And this is what excellent looks like. And this is how we're going to get there. And this will be our identity and how we get there. When you're able to properly explain that DNA of how you're going to lead as a team and everyone can buy in on that, then you have something different.
Right.
People feel differently.
Yeah.
People act differently. And when you go even further, in our DNA, in our culture, the way we're going to talk to each other is this. The way I'm going to hold you accountable looks like this. The way we're going to communicate is going to be this. And you start to develop, like you said, purpose and passion, and making sure that you're ready to go forward with things. But DNA, I always think the best leaders can clearly describe their DNA of what they're trying to do.
Sure. Yeah. Has to be, because if the leader doesn't do it, you're subject to just getting through and going through the motions every day. But if you understand why you're going through the motions every day, it keeps you motivated. And I think that's a really great point that you're making, because it really does, you talk about that burnout leader. Well, he's not going to be burnt out if he keeps the vision in mind and protects that vision, protects the purpose.
Yeah. Explains the why, right?
Yeah.
And when you're explaining the why, and people can really start to, I can use this to continue to drive forward, and I can talk about others to help them drive forward. That's what I think really great leaders. So if you're out there and you're leading, one thing that I always suggest all leaders to do is to develop what I call a playbook. What are your non-negotiables? Set what you want to happen and how you want to address everything that you can potentially think of in the low-hanging fruit category.
Yeah.
So in the low-hanging fruit in the church world, I'm going to make stuff up and you correct me as I go. The low-hanging fruit is, how are we going to invite people into our church when they walk in on Sunday? That's probably an easy thing. We're going to greet. We're going to have people there to make them feel welcome. Those are low-hanging fruit things. But if you don't cast the vision of how you want that to be, I'm assuming at least, then it's helter-skelter. Then there's not a lot of direction.
Right.
So there's low-hanging fruit in those vision settings. I think great leaders do differently. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. The great leaders communicate that vision with their team so that everyone's on the same page, and that vision just permeates everything that you do, the staff meetings, the committee meetings, everything, because then people know, like, this is the purpose. This is why we're here.
Yes.
We're a well-trained, oiled machine. We're moving forward together.
So I hope you have your DNA ready, because I'm slapping the ping pong ball right back to you, and you're ready to hit. What do you got?
Number 3 here.
Yeah.
Great leaders handle criticism graciously and resolutely.
What do you mean? So, I mean, a leader has to be able to take criticism with grace?
Yeah. So we should receive correction, and sometimes we need that. Most of the time, when you're a leader, what you'll understand is that everyone has an opinion about how you do your job. And I think one of the things that I've had to learn over the years is to handle those things with grace, because it's easy to become defensive and then hold on to that bitterness, and like that distracts you from the vision of following your conviction, right? And following what you're moving forward in.
Yes.
And you know how it is when somebody criticizes you, it's annoying. It makes you upset. You're thinking, is there some validity to it? And I think there is some health in saying, okay, is there some validity to it? Yeah.
And I think, the part of that's where you say great leaders handle criticism graciously. And what was the second part? The
resolutely.
Resolutely. I think that, and I have this written down too, just in my notes, that the best leaders don't try to be the smartest in the room. They make the room smarter. So when you are receiving criticism as a leader, if you can take that in and say, wow, thank you for helping us get better. If that criticism it comes from a genuine place.
Yeah.
If that criticism comes from people that are making great suggestions, well, as leaders, wow, you just, kind of going back to bad leaders, in a bad organization, no one leads. In a good organization, the leader leads. In an amazing, excellent organization, everyone leads. So what you're saying is exactly that.
Yeah.
It is exactly, hey, I'm able to give you some feedback, even though you might be my boss, even though you might be my leader. Here's some feedback on things and where I think that you can also do better. And if you take that graciously and resolutely, then you get to grow.
Yeah, that's what I mean by resolutely. Like, we have to be resolved to do a better job. And sometimes the criticisms are not warranted. So I always say, there's no theys or thems or he's or she's when it comes to criticism. There has to be a name there, because if we are a mature team, a well-oiled machine, then we shouldn't be afraid to have courageous conversations. I think that's a term I learned from you, that if I have an issue and I think that I'm struggling because of the way that you handled a situation, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to say, Gene, I have this issue, me. Yep. Or I can't come to you and say, hey, someone's said to me that you're doing this or that. No, that person has to have a name and has to have the courage, if they want to criticize, to do it. Otherwise, we let it roll off our back like water off a duck.
Right. And that's really how you develop trust within teams, is when criticism is given, criticism is received.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where trust is earned and drops and lost in buckets. So it's easy for a leader when someone, because it's hard, right, to come in and tell a boss or a leader like, hey, I have some things I want to be able to say, or even for the boss to someone else's, I have some words of advice for you. And it can get lost like that if it's received of defensiveness with ego, if it's received with all of those negative attributes.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good one. I'm kind of surprised that you were able to come up with that.
Well, I think I want to say one more thing about that.
Okay.
Because we live in a culture of criticism right now, where I have a lot of guys like you and I on the internet. And if you and I wanted to be jerks, we could just go around critiquing every other leader out there, saying how bad they are. And at some point, we'll do some
yeah,
critiquing.
Absolutely. But I can't wait to take a shot at your leadership style.
Yeah. But we live in this culture where everything is fair game, and we have to remember how our words affect others. And I think it's an important thing as a leader to model gracious and kindness, like to be kind towards others and believe the best. Like, just because you fail me once doesn't mean you're a bad person. And I think that's where we get kind of lost in the weeds. If you nitpicked all my sermons, you could
find it.
You could find
with the right
what
mindset,
a bad guy I am. But listen, you know my heart, and I know your heart. And so we have to believe the best about each other. And that's the kind of culture we need to build on our teams, where criticism is not the order of the day. It's like, okay, it's encouragement, it's upbuilding, and yes, sometimes correction.
Right. And, the idea is, and I just heard this at a leadership conference, is that, the saying, like, don't kick me while I'm down.
Yeah.
But you kick them when they're up. Right? When they're doing a good job, and then you still have criticism like, hey, that was some awesome, where I give you 90 seconds of praise, but then we're going to go for 3 minutes of growth.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is, when they're down and it's time for criticism, the best way, obviously, criticize in private, praise in public. That's just very good.
Yeah.
Good leadership advice. And I think that kind of goes with here, is understand the situation when you're involved in criticism.
Yeah.
If it's something extremely serious and it's something that is not something that can be handled in a 30-second, critique, then maybe set the stage a little differently.
Right.
Right.
I have a lot of colleagues right now, guys that I love and collaborate with, other pastors, even some well-known pastors that, they get called heretics and things like this. And it's like, it's not warranted. Of course, if you're saying something heretical, of course, you're called to call that out in my profession, but it's just differences of theology. And it's not cool to call someone a heretic because you understand a secondary issue a little bit differently. So that's criticism is kind of a raw spot in my heart because it's happened to me even. And I think we just have to be very, very careful when we're leading our teams to be like, you know what, be very careful. Do you know this person's heart?
Well, let's look at the criticism that Jesus gave others, right? So let's talk about that real quick. So in some ways, he responded with parables. That's the way sometimes he critiqued people.
Yeah.
Sometimes he also critiqued people with flipping some tables and saying, this is not the way you're supposed to do this.
Well, he says, woe to you, to the Pharisees, you hypocrites. Like there is a time for that, but that's the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, well, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But there are times for that. But for the most part, I feel that when it was time to correct or when it was time to extend points, he did so in a very loving, kind manner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think of Peter, like, do you love me, Peter? Feed my sheep. Like, he restores him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so is it my turn now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very, very excited about this. I'm going to shake the table for this one. And this is one I've been I couldn't wait to talk about. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So the best leaders ask better questions instead of giving all the answers. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. I am notorious for saying things such as, have you ever considered?
Yeah.
Or, I see this slightly different. What do you think about this? Or, have you ever thought about this? Asking questions before already knowing your direct way of saying, no, I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
And so I think the best leaders ask better questions instead of giving all of the answers. Because typically as leaders, you typically have a little bit more of a knowledge base, an understanding of your organization where the right idea is already on your mind and maybe not on everyone else's mind.
You're right.
And so one way that we can build up other leaders is to ask the right questions as leaders. And I think that's what great leaders do it so differently. Is they lead them to the answer by asking questions. So, one way I would maybe do it with you is I'd say, Matt, have you ever considered, recording your sermons and putting them out there into the internet? And, you say, maybe I haven't thought about, well, have you ever considered reaching an audience larger than where we're at now? Well, yeah, I don't know. Have you ever considered the easiness of what's available and technology-wise to get this done? And so, I'm kind of leading you to water to have you drink.
I like it.
I think the best leaders do that better than anyone.
I think so, because, you're obviously building your team as well. You're giving them confidence as you lead them. And I think it's a great idea. Let me ask you this. Okay. Let's say one of your employees had a really bad idea and you knew it. However, you didn't want to just, give him the right answer. How would you lead that employee to the right answer?
Yeah, this happens all the time. So usually I typically have the worst idea in the room, but sometimes I actually have, a better way and approach of doing things. So I will say, will you allow the team to poke holes in this idea?
That's great.
Are you ready to allow us to poke holes and see where the breaking points are in this idea? And then I'll say, okay, what about, have you ever thought about the way parents would perceive this if we were to roll this out?
Yeah.
Then I'd say, the next, what do you think this group of teachers would say if we did this? And how would you communicate that with them? And to get them to start to get the old mouse churning on the wheel inside of saying, okay, maybe I haven't thought this all through. So my very first go-to thing, this is something that I want all of you to steal, is to say, we have a poke holes time. All right, here's my idea. Here's what I think we should do. And then typically our leaders now just say, okay, poke holes time, let's go. And so, but if that's not happening, I'll say, do you feel like you're ready for the whole team to poke holes in this idea? Let's all think of ways this couldn't work. And if it stands up to the test, it's a litmus test of can you survive the poke holes time? And if it does, it's typically a good idea. So that's how we would do it. Do you have any other ways that you have done it in the past?
I give the team maybe it's not necessarily leading them in questions, but we have a thing at staff meeting every week where it's called Matt's 6 scenarios. And so I'll throw out a scenario.
You named it after yourself.
Yes.
All right. I love that. I love that. Okay. Very cool.
And I'm sure someone else has already had the idea, but I'll throw out, hey, a shooter comes into the auditorium and, you just throw out a scenario and then I'll say, go. And they brainstorm different ways of handling it, and then they get done. I'm completely silent during the process, and then at the end I give them the right answer.
Oh, okay. I like it. I like it. See, there's just plenty of ways. And I think that's what the amazing leaders do so well, is they don't just jump right to the conclusion.
Yeah.
They allow the process of thinking it to happen.
Right.
I think great teachers do that as well. They don't just give the answer. They allow the process of thinking to develop and happen. And that's what really makes for strong teams, is when the collaboration element is in the room.
Yeah.
When I can say, I have an idea, and everyone pops up to listen because we're excited. We're genuinely excited about their idea.
Absolutely. Very good.
So I think I just gave one of the best ones, but it's
I have a better one.
It's back to you. What do you got?
The greatest leaders are the greatest motivators.
Ooh, okay. I have some really good stuff on this, so I'm going to let you go first for a little bit, but I actually have this. Go ahead. The greatest leaders are the greatest motivators.
So I want you to think about in your life, who is as an example, greatest motivators as far as like, someone that you would look up to, and we could have come on this podcast. It would be a dream for you.
Oh man. So head football coach, high school, the one and only Mr. Tom O'Boyle had our football team ready to run through walls. Every single practice, every single game, he had an ability to just get under our skin and to just get us excited and willing to just run through any wall for him. Absolutely. I know exactly.
So we all have those, right? Yeah. And, obviously Tom Osborne was a different kind of motivator, but he was still a great motivator. Like his guys wanted to run through walls for him. No doubt about it. And so there's something special about those guys. And the question is, what is the secret sauce, right? When it comes to motivation. And they're the kind of guys that know how to build up, in these cases, young men and motivate them. And so the question you have to ask yourself, what builds up and what motivates this group of people that I'm leading? Okay. Find that out, but also lead from your convictions that we talked about earlier. And you put those two things together and you really do have some secret sauce that will work.
Yes, because I have written down the best leaders are electric, which I would put into this same category, is that leaders need to sound like leaders. And as far, the Tom Osborne thing is an enigma. You don't see too many quiet, calm leaders. They're out there. But a lot of people will gravitate and be magnetic towards the people that can really get them excited about what they're about to
do. The Coach Primes. I know,
absolutely.
He knows how to motivate.
Yeah, because he has a way with words. He knows how to speak growth into existence.
Yes.
And that's something that you do really well, like in the church. I've never seen so many people come to faith with the Holy Spirit using you to be able to be a mouthpiece for come to the altar. Bend the knee. Make sure that we confess in front of everyone, kind of the whole Billy Graham thing, like, hey, it's important to be in our profession of our faith to come. And the way that you do that isn't like this. So if you have accepted Christ in your heart, we ask you to come to the altar because that's a profession of faith. What you do is, and I've noticed and I picked up on this because I use it in my speeches, not necessarily come to the altar, but the way your cadence is. When you're talking, you're emotional, you're involved. A lot of times you're tearing up, and I know that's real and genuine. And then you pause for dramatic effect, and then you have the room when you can hear a pin drop in the room, and that motivates people to take that extra step of faith to say, okay, God, I know I've been ready to do this, but now it's a sign. Now I know I'm ready. And that's what great leaders can do
Right.
for their organization, for their people. I mean, God uses you in that way, typically every Sunday, to where, not only are you a pastor, and not only are you trying to decipher God's word to the best of your abilities to try to reach and teach everyone about God, but God's also using you as a motivator to come to him. And I think we don't talk about that enough, especially in the pastoral world, of how important motivation is in maybe the pastoral world. I could be wrong, but I think it's important. I don't know.
Those are kind words. Thank you. And honestly, I just want people to know Jesus. That's my heart. And I want them to hear his voice. And so that's easy for me to be motivated and passionate about that, because it's near and dear to my heart, is knowing Jesus. And I think if we're not passionate about the things that we're called to do, that will show through. And so, yeah, I don't get to take credit for that, but it is a blessing to get to do it. One of my favorite things that I had the privilege of doing this last year was speak to 1,000 youth at this conference.
Yes, that was amazing.
And so speaking to these high schoolers, it really lit a fire under me, because one of the things that I love to do is motivate young people to live for the Lord. And that day was like one of my favorite speaking engagements ever, just speaking to these youth and seeing the fire and the passion, and the Holy Spirit just fall on that crowd as they were engaged with what was being said. And I think we have a generation of young people that need us to be the leaders that God called us to be, so that he can do his thing.
Well, and I'll tell you, to kind of add to that, is that, and you've done this with me in my past, that just the best leaders make you believe in yourself before you even believe in yourself.
Oh, I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so when that motivator, you're like, wait, you think I can do this?
Yeah.
Wait, you think I'm capable of this?
Yeah.
So if you're at home and you're a leader, I will tell you, pour belief into your people.
Yes, that's so good.
I mean, just let them know that they can and they will. And that motivator, that catalyst for motivation will do your organization, your people so much growth, and it will project them, and not project, but it will propel them into such amazing amounts of success by just believing in them before they even believe in each other.
Yes.
So too often, like, I will find a teacher that I just see has a lot of great leadership aspects, and I'll tell them, hey, listen, I think you'd make a great principal someday. You should really think about it. And the amount of people that got into administration because of that small conversation, you would be shocked. I didn't even consider it until you came to me and said, I think you'd be good at this. And so that's something for all of you at home, is if you have people that you're, even like your own kids, believe in them before they even, believe in themselves. Absolutely.
I love that. Speaking words of life into people. It's so important that we do that, because the world is full of negativity, Debbie Downers. They need someone to believe in them. And so, if you're a dad or a father, that's one of the most important things that we do as fathers, is we motivate our kids to be everything that God has called them to be. And that means speaking life into them, like, I believe in you. You can do this. A kid needs to know that dad is proud of them and believes in them, even when they fail, because we all are going to fail. We need that motivation to keep going. And so many kids grow up without a father today, and they spend their entire lives trying to earn the respect of everyone in their lives, and they really only needed that affirmation as a child.
That's it. And and that's a big bingo bango bongo time, because really that's what it is motivation is speaking confidence into people. And every one of us needs that at some point.
We do. Yeah,
absolutely.
And
words of affirmation.
You're very good at that. And one of the things that you did when you came is you had a culture change here. In the school system. And that was the biggest part of this, Gene, is you brought a sense of motivation and purpose to the organization that you lead. And so you are very good at this, in the sense that the culture has changed. People speak life, and there's encouragement there.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So now,
Well, I can criticize you about a
well,
lot
and
of
you have before, but we don't have enough time on the podcast to do that. So, because I can't wait to talk about my next one.
Uh-huh.
So I think for the next point here, I want everyone to listen carefully because this isn't a flowers and rainbows one. I think the best leaders run towards hard conversations, not away from them. I always look at the people that are great in leadership that are willing to have hard conversations with those around us that we all know are not leading up to the standard.
Yeah.
So here's what I mean by that. All right. Let's say I'm in a room full of people and we're all working our tail off, but we know that one person over there hasn't been pulling their weight. Well, me as their, parallel person, I'm lateral to you. I don't get to tell you that you're not pulling your weight.
Yeah.
In a way that's meaningful and productive. It's the leader that does that.
Yeah.
And so when we as leaders don't run towards those hard conversations and we don't embrace that as our role, then what happens is the people that shouldn't be having those conversations begin to have those conversations and they do it wrong.
And then you have gossip and infighting. And it's a great point. I think those conversations are easy to want to avoid. And so we don't want you to feel bad that you want to avoid those. We want to avoid those. Like, they're not our favorite thing, but we run towards them. Otherwise, there's dissension in the organization. Yeah.
And there's a little bit of authority in that of, okay, I am going to do this because it's best for the organization, not because it's best for me and my personal relationship. And that is the hardest aspect about this is many of those conversations are at basically the detriment of the relationship.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard to lead. And it doesn't get any easier, I don't think, is because as you grow and stay in leadership, those conversations, because we're all human, have to happen. Right. So I'm going to need someone to have a hard conversation with me. That is, someone that's in charge of me because I'm not meeting the standard. It will happen at some point, but as a leader, you have to do it for everybody and you have to do it more often than you'd like to probably, but it is just part of the job. And so, but sometimes it's at the detriment of relationships.
And I think you have to grow some thick skin. That is the truth in this. Even, as you receive criticism from especially those outside your organization, there's going to be that. And so you're going to have people that are not your fan, and that's okay. So this also feeds into that. Those hard conversations are going to create some tension at times for personal relationships you may have. But the person, if they're working for you for any length of time and you're being a good leader, they're going to know that you really do care for them. And that'll be some currency that you build up.
So when I start hard conversations, so for all of you at home, this is just my template here, is one, I don't say, how's it going? Right? So I think you kind of talked about this in the sermon again, like when you know that there's a hard conversation happening, what I do is I thank them for their time. And then I set the stage for what type of conversation we're going to have. So step one, I thank them for their time. Thank you for making time. Okay. And then step two, I set the stage. Today, I want to talk about, let's say, your email and your tone of email language to the staff. I don't, beat around the bush. I just get right into it. And right after I set the stage of what I want to talk about, Matt, then what I do is I say how I want it to end. I want to talk about your email and your tone in your email. But by the end of this meeting, I want to have a great understanding of where you're at and currently and your mindset with things, where I'm at and my mindset, and come to an amazing agreement on how we can move forward and grow from here. So when you set the entire stage that way, one, you eliminate any sort of miscommunication as to what we're talking about.
Or speculation.
Yeah. And how you want it to end, right? I'm not saying I want this to end in friction. And I typically say, I want you to, at the end of this, to walk out of this room feeling we had a great productive conversation and we're going to grow from here. So I always start it that way. Thank you for the time that, you're making to come to me. here's the stage and what we're going to be talking about, and here's how I want it to end.
Hmm.
Those 3 simple steps help lead to productive, hard conversations.
What happens when the conversation doesn't go the way that you want or anticipate, and there's some major disagreement? Just curious.
Yeah. So I think it's the elephant in the room is you have to identify that. You can say, hey, clearly, we are at different understanding levels of what the situation takes in order to get to our end result.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to come back to middle ground.
Hmm.
And so the one way, like in your world, I'm sure you can, you have probably different ways you can pray about it. Like, hey, let's take a break and go pray about it
Yeah.
and pray together about it. But in my world, I'm able to just pause and say, hey, listen, we are getting off track here on the end result of leaving with a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
Let's get back on track. And
Right.
so it's just redirecting.
Mhm.
It's a common teaching practice to redirect back to the main thing.
Mhm.
Because when we get off track, it's typically because we're pulling any sort of argument to try to win this conversation.
Yeah.
I am bringing up the past. I am bringing up things you said that aren't relevant to this. And that can quickly get you off track.
Yeah.
And then part of the hard conversation is being prepared, like you mentioned earlier,
Right.
is having a great preparation mindset to know, here are my main points I want to be able to talk about. Here's what I want them to get better at, and have that all ready to where you're not fumbling
Sure.
with things. What about you? And if the conversation starts to go sideways, what do you typically do?
Well, I have failed at this plenty of times, just to preface this. So, honestly, when things aren't going very well, there has to be a pause. You have to be able to take a timeout. Every game has those, and we have those at our disposal as well. And I've had to have those conversations where I say, okay, this is getting heated. It's getting out of hand. We need to have a pause, and let's come back to it tomorrow. Let's come back to it in an hour, but we are coming back to this.
Yeah.
And
This isn't going away.
no. So,
Awesome.
yep.
Awesome. Well, I think that's really darn good, Matt. And before we kind of end this podcast, I wanted to know if you had any more points that you were just dying to get out that we didn't cover today.
I think a very important one, maybe the most important one, the greatest leaders are humble. They don't see themselves as the greatest leaders. And I think where in my profession, we're seeing pastors fall left and right is in this area. It begins with pride. And if we don't check ourselves, it can be very dangerous. And that's something I struggle with, being honest. Like, so it's like,
me too.
Yeah.
I think any good looking guy such as ourselves is probably going to have a sliver of pride problems.
Yeah.
And I have written down here also as part of that is this: the best leaders are humble enough to be wrong and bold enough to change.
Yeah, that's great.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
That bold enough to change part, when you get humbled by someone to say, okay, I'm going to change my action for the betterment of this decision.
Right.
And that's hard to do. It really is hard to do. And so today, if you were listening, we went over some humdingers of gems of what the great leaders do differently. I will tell you, what Jesus did differently. Here's an easy one. He did everything perfect.
Yeah.
So, that's right. So he did everything perfect and he didn't make a single mistake. Right. He had such level 1 million leadership where people went to the grave with like, nope, that dude is real. I saw him. He was resurrected. He talked to me with like 500 other people. Yeah. Go ahead and throw me in tar, turn me upside down, crucify me. I'm going to be with the Father here in a hot minute. Yeah. And so, guys, we're all just kind of striving for that perfection. We're never going to get there, but we're striving for it. Yeah. And so that is a wrap today on episode 4. We hope you enjoyed it. What separates the best from the great? We talked about some amazing things. And one thing I want to make sure that all of us understand is that when you are leading, you have to try to pick the things that really relate and resonate with you in this episode. You're not going to be able to use everything to your advantage because we're all in different situations. Yeah. But use it to your advantage here and take what you can and leave with grace, humility, leave with a little bit of confidence to know that you can do this. Holy Grit Leadership, episode 4. Thanks, guys, and we hope you have a great day.